We're at the March 2017 Probe International Conference, and you've just given a talk on a very serious subject with very sinister overtones
and undertones, yeah,
and everything else.
Yeah.
Could you care to expand on it?
Yeah, well, the speech was entitled The Targeted Individual Phenomena, but I would say predominantly I concentrated more on the mind control element and the fact that people are being implanted with technology and the implications for all of us concerning this, particularly given that we're being sprayed with nanobots, which we're all inhaling and ingesting. Via something I didn't mention as well is that not just via being sprayed, it's in our food, it's in our medicines, and it's any way they can get it into us, they're getting it into us. And we have to ask the question why. But if people don't know, they're not aware, they're not able to ask the question why. So that's what we're trying to do. Wake people up to the fact of what's going on so they'll start to ask the question why and what, where, and who.
Exactly. And you showed some very strong evidence for what's happening to you.
Yeah.
Could you tell us how you got that evidence and when you first became aware of what was happening to you?
Well, a doctor told me what was wrong with me initially, but I had no idea. I just knew something was wrong. But predominantly, I put it down to my wisdom teeth, impacted wisdom teeth, because the main implants are here. They're actually attached to the backs of my upper jaw. Okay. And when my wisdom teeth started coming through, there was no room for them to grow. So I was in absolute agony, and the swelling at the back of my mouth was inordinate. And private dentists were having fits, saying, I want to treat you, but I can't. This is too serious. You need hospital treatment. So they were referring me, and the hospitals were turning me away. But the other dentist kept sending me back. So I went back and I met a consultant who examined me and immediately stepped back. He knew what he was looking at. Went away, came back and said, I'd like you to meet another doctor. Will you come with me? So I went to a completely different part of the hospital, sat in a private examination room. And I'd have to say, with hindsight, an amazing man came in and told me what was wrong with me. He told me straight my problem was not my teeth, that I'd been implanted with technology and that this must have been done during a surgical procedure under general anaesthetic. It would be impossible otherwise.
Wow.
So he questioned me on when and where it might have happened. And I'd forgotten I'd had an operation in a hospital when I was a teenager. And he said, you've had major dental surgery? I said, yes, twice. He said, no wonder you don't like dentists. You're a T27. And I'm like, what? You've had technology implanted inside of your person.
T27.
We went on to find out, as I've mentioned in another speech I gave, because I had a friend who worked for an analyst house in the medical research field. He was to establish that T27 biomedical implants were openly for sale on the internet, but for use in non-human free-roaming primates. So essentially the technology is there for anybody to read up on, to learn, even though the authorities are denying it. It has been for a very long time, but, of course, not for use in humans. I'm not the only exception to that rule.
And do you have any idea who would have done it to you?
Well, I know who facilitated it, but I've got to say no, ultimately, to that question. But I sincerely doubt that any organisation could be behind this, other than the military, the intelligence services. There's absolutely no way that I believe a private organisation could have done this to me. There's other aspects involved. I mean, when the newspapers interviewed me, for instance, I explained to them that the person I was closest to when I was younger, that I looked up to the most, was my uncle. My uncle was a soldier. He was in REME, Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers. Spent a lot of time in the Arctic Circle, and of course in that field at that time would have known all about this. He disappeared when I was 15 and has never been seen again. We talk about triggering as well, because that's a big part of being a TI and how we're controlled via the security services and a network of operatives and people that they use. And I remember turning round to him and saying, I'm going in the Marines. And it's just the way he looked at me. He turned around and he looked at me and said, no, you're not. They're cannon fodder. You're not going in the Marines. And I'm thinking, oh, what does he mean by that then? Of course, I grow up to find out that I'm implanted from head to foot with military technology. However, again, that's just to sort of like emphasise that there's confusion there, there's grey areas, because I personally don't believe it was him involved, but that's something that the newspapers were very, very interested in. I think it's far more likely, if he's got any connection to it, that he disappeared because of it, because he's somebody that could have helped me. And in fact, I've had a conversation with a retired military microwave weapons expert, and I explained this to him about my uncle, and said it's not only that. I said throughout my life, since this kick-started, which was in my 30s really, they've used his voice to counsel me.
Wow.
Yeah,
Right.
and that of others as well. And this is something which
Is it some people you know?
Yeah,
Right.
even famous people. I've spoken to
Voices
political figures and negotiating situations. They put me into situations where I'm negotiating. Now, when I explained this to somebody once, they turned around and said to me, have you ever seen Elmer's Endgames? And I said, no, I haven't. They said, watch that film. And the film was all about, they got these children playing video games, and it was like mock exercises, and they got them into this control room, and they had them playing these video games, but they deceived them. They actually literally destroyed, in the film this is, an entire civilization on another planet. And it wasn't until the children were all jumping up and down and screaming and cheering that the solemn looks on the faces of the adults that had manipulated them into this told the children that this wasn't a game, this was real. Now, this is a quandary with me. You know, I've experienced so much of this over the years, situations I'm put in, and it all goes off in my head. And I'm told it's cybernetic warfare, and that I am really a soldier. That's one of the very first things I was told when they spoke to me in my head the first time. That there were things about my life that I wasn't aware of yet.
I was just going to ask you, do you have missing time?
Yeah.
Or aware of?
Yeah, I've lost time. Yeah, and even when I was oblivious to this, that's something I talked about, that I couldn't figure certain things, you know, we've all had times where we've gone out and the night seems to go in a flash, but I've literally I won't say many, but I'll say at least several occasions, been saying to people, there's something very strange, when I've seen them in the morning, you know, something very strange about tonight. In my younger years this was, I said, because, you know, literally I feel like I've been here about 15 minutes and I'm looking at my watch and I've been here 8.5 hours. And this is strange. But I used to say these things jovially sometimes and a bit confused. But as I've now grown up to learn that this is very, very much a part of the program, the Manchurian candidate aspect of things, which I truly hope isn't the case, isn't true.
Of course.
But I do believe, yes, it's very extremely possible, yeah.
So with this strange experience that you're having throughout your life, what is your view on spirituality?
Well, it's enhanced that aspect of my, let's say, belief systems. As we were talking before privately, well, as a younger man, I was just sort of like, as I said, I was black and white with regards to the situation. I wasn't religious, I wasn't spiritual. You know, we're biological beings, we're matter. Having said that, though, I always did maintain a direct relationship with God. I used to pray a lot. And that was, again, to take you back there, that was what they used to convince me that I wasn't going mad. They quoted me from a child. They said, do you remember when you were a little boy and you prayed to God? I won't elaborate on this story about something. And I went, yes, I do remember that, and vividly. And I've not thought about it since. I must have been 7 years old. And then they gave me some information there, which just brought it home. And I'm like, whoa, this didn't come from within inside me. This came from an external source. This is extraneous, is the word. So, all right, I'm all ears. Tell me more. And that's when they went on to explain you're a soldier, but you're not aware of it yet. And so on, and so on, and so on. So a lot of people, when they experience V2K, and I've had it detrimentally and negatively, where it's done to disturb me. Voice to skull, yeah. Detrimentally to disturb me, to make my life difficult, to try and contain it. But overall, predominantly for me, it's been extremely beneficial. In fact, I spent over a number of weeks, many hours with psychologists and psychiatrists a couple of years ago. And I met with about 7 or 8. They even brought doctors in from outside to meet up with me, and all of them accepted my evidence and my testimony and my circumstances. But were at a complete loss as to how to help me. Now, I've just lost myself a little bit with regards to the point I was going to make there. Could you repeat the question again?
I was asking what your view on spirituality is.
No, why did I get on to... Oh, no, the V2K. I've moved on to that. Yeah, no, just let me make that point. Because what these doctors said to me was that we've only got one question left for you. They told me they weren't allowed to discuss the technology with me. They'd accepted it. And that question is, how on earth, as a human being, can you deal with this? Because insofar as we're concerned, you should need our help, but you don't appear that you do. So I said, right, now we've reached this point in proceedings, I'll tell you. But I wasn't going to tell you initially, because insofar as your textbooks are concerned, if I explain this to you, I would just become immediately diagnosed with some sort of schizoid disorder. But I said, I get counselling, and this counselling is genius, and it's from people that know my life inside out, every aspect of my persona. And they can talk me round and out of just about anything. Excuse my stomach rumbling, I've hardly eaten for a couple of days. And they keep me intact, and they've explained this is an intrinsic part of who and what you are, a soldier, a psychological warfare operative. In other words, you've been in a system of abuse all your life, but you've been able to deal with that abuse because it's one of the reasons you are who you are. You're a durable person. And you're also, I could go into more depth how they've programmed me this way, as they've explained it to me. You're not someone who's prone to responding with violence, even to violence. You're tolerant and you're durable, and you find other ways around. But we've created largely the person you are, in some ways, the person that you are. You know, to emphasize that, they've said to me, do you remember as a young man again, you used to have repetitive dreams about getting into fights and you couldn't move your arms and your legs? I said, I do. And I said, well, people get those sort of things. And they said, no, we gave those to you for psychological reasons, to develop the attributes that you had to create this person. And your role is to oppose this. So I explained to these psychologists and these psychiatrists that that's what makes me different. That's how I can endure such extreme levels of trauma and persecution and abuse and come through. There's much more I can say along such lines there, but I need to go back and answer the question you actually asked me. Yeah. Spirituality is something, yes, which has developed within me as I've grown. I don't think there's any way that this is all there is to life. No way. There's much more to it. Now, I'm a mind control target, and this has all happened later in life for me, not when I was young, but I've had past life experiences. But I also have to accept that these can be induced or given to me via the technology. So I have to kind of sort of like, you know, I can't accept things, most things fully, categorically, because of what I'm dealing with. It's like virtual reality. You know, I deal with two worlds, the here and now, you know, the reality we can touch and taste, and then this virtual reality, which really is very little to do with me and here, is technological in origins. However, just last week I was talking to the people that are putting this documentary together, and I said, look, sometimes I read articles from physicists where they're discussing theories where things aren't proven yet. Now, it's not that I take on board and accept these theories and what they're saying because of what I've experienced, but it is enough, really, to emphasize the fact that these scientists and these sorts of people are interested in these fields, so therefore they're going to experiment to try to find out if it's true. So I could be used as some sort of vessel. I'm actually referring to now an article I read a couple of weeks ago in which they're claiming there are certain entities which we can't see, we can't touch, they're not physical, we can only communicate with our brains. Now this mirrors some of the experiences I've had, but I have to be very, very careful as to what I regurgitate, because I could also be used as a disinfo agent, as in I'm given certain experiences, and if I accept them as true, as categoric, and start espousing them, saying them to other people, a percentage of people would take those on board and it could kickstart certain belief systems. So I have to be very reserved. Well, I am very reserved purposefully because of that. And insofar as spirituality is concerned, I've always been a person that wants proof, that wants evidence. Faith has never been something which I thought I could rely on, because somebody else could have written the Bible. I do believe it's been changed and altered over the years by certain scholars and certain people, but I don't believe it's nonsense. In fact, a lot of my targeting and my experiences have been religious based, politically based. I even question, I mean, this is full-blown two-way conversations. And when things have been really, really extreme for me, torture-wise, when I'm literally being tortured, and it's like the Stockholm syndrome, yeah. I actually turn to them for the help, and then I'm asking questions, and I'm saying, look, what on earth is going on here? And one of the answers I got in the early days when this was going on, that sticks in my mind, is said, what you're involved in is whether or not we're going to wind up standing on another planet in the future, looking up to the sky, pointing at this one, and asking each other, what on earth happened there? Because this has happened before on other planets. Now, what I want to emphasize here is that, as I said, as a younger man, I wasn't a fantastical thinker at all. You know, I was just simplistic. Life was about having fun. If we're gifted with life, we should enjoy it. That's what it was all about. And pursue, achieving things in life and giving back. If anybody asks me what I believe in politically, it's individual freedom, yet collective responsibility. And I questioned things from a very, very young age, particularly the way we're governed, because I thought it was rubbish. I thought we could do so much better and with a lot less money. So, I've questioned things from the off, really, the practical things. But it is the spiritual side which has knocked me back, really, as to... I've gone through almost a metamorphosis with regards to that, a change in my personality. And I don't think I was a disbeliever totally when I was young. I think it was a reaction to how I was treated. Like, it can't be true. Otherwise, all this couldn't happen to me and all this wouldn't be happening in the world. And things like, I remember watching a documentary about an atheist, a famous atheist made this documentary actually. And he was pointing out that how can we have a benign God when, let's look into the animal kingdom or the insect world in this instance. He said, we've got a parasitic wasp here which injects its offspring, its fetuses or whatever, into this bug. And those infants eat their way out of the bug, so they use it as like an incubator. Now, this is atrocious. If we have a benign God, how can this sort of thing be going off in nature? But something, when I've asked questions along these lines, I get explanations. This is when it gets a bit grey, because I have thought along these lines myself, and sometimes I've mentioned earlier belief systems, and that's what this stuff is. It's a weapons system. It's artificial intelligence, which is educating itself in order to be able to control the globe's population. Hence, they're using people from all over the world, from all sorts of cultural backgrounds, from all sorts of belief systems, and spirituality plays a big part of it. Because, well, I believe it's the one world government, the New World Order that's behind this, and they want a one world religion, because that's an easy way to control people. Spirituality, to me, and I have been exposed to a lot of people who are very educated, Max being one of them as well, historically, is about freedom, not control. Religion, to me, is about control, not freedom. And I suppose it depends how it's packaged, really, and what people expect from you, what you've got to adhere to. I'm by nature something of a loner. Not because I'm sociopathic, because I like my own company. I'm never going to be a follower. But yet, in the eyes of the way things are at the moment, if you go against the grain, or you're not one of the flock, then there's something wrong. But I don't think there's anything wrong with me because of that, or other people. So in other words, I've got too many questions with regards to the way things are. you know. But if it was conducive and it was positive and there was reason to believe in it, yeah, I'd accept it, full stop. Of course I would. But I want answers. I'm not willing to accept other people's word for things anymore, because so much of what I've learned in life has turned out to be fallacy, rubbish. Again, being interviewed for this documentary, I've talked in length along these lines, and they said to me, "Can you sum up what it means to you to grow up to find out you're in the position you're in?" And I said, "Yeah, straight away and immediately, an absolute betrayal of everything I was brought up to trust and believe in." And that's why I've got an issue with governmental organisations, with religious organisations, with civil rights groups, because this is known and it's happening, and not one of them is doing anything about it. Now, that is pure evil. But I do believe, somebody said to me, like, I've talked about that I believe Satanists are behind this, and somebody said to me, "But Kieron, Satan isn't real." I said, whether he is or whether he isn't, they believe he is, and they're using such doctrines to perpetrate the crimes that they're perpetrating. So therefore, I will oppose that, and stand against it. And if I was evil, I think I'd be all right, to be honest with you, because that's the system. Because they're the ones that seem to be doing well. Now, I'm a believer in that if you have a society, a community, or a collective, that good should be prevailing over evil. That way, things can be controlled. If it's the reverse, then everybody's in peril from the top to the bottom of that structure, including the children, which is the scenario we have. So unless we've got people governing our lives who can be trusted, they can't be allowed to use the kinds of technologies they're using on us in the way that they're using them unopposed. We have to oppose them. And it's dangerous to speak like this, and I've tried every which way I can to find another way to communicate this and bring about some sort of change. But I've got to the point now where, and I've said this again openly, where I will start to advocate revolution, because they are implanting people's children at birth. And I know people very, very involved in this system who say they've got evidence that this has been going off in places like Sweden for a long time. So an entire generation is going to grow up chipped. So therefore, any one of them doesn't toe the party line, bang. They can either mind control them into doing so, take them out even instantly, as they are doing. This is happening today. The situation we have, to me, is akin to the Nazis when they were rounding up undesirables and shipping them off to extermination camps. Now, how do you define an undesirable? That's belief systems again. So essentially what you've got is the nasty, vindictive people who've got power just picking people. They're doing it to steal people's wealth, their wife, maybe, for instance, or even to get the children. This is criminal activity. It's known it's happening, and it's just being completely overlooked. And the most dangerous aspect of it is that the populace, the apathy among the populace, is rife, and it's that way because they've been conditioned that way. And this is why I have a problem with the alternative media as well. There's too much sensationalism. We should separate things like... No, it's indelibly linked, I agree, but the physical from the spiritual. To me, this is matter of fact. This is spiritual. This is torture. I'm being killed. But it is about the psyche. And the psyche is the spirit, the soul. And again, Project Soulcatcher. This is what this technology, everything I've learned, is all about, and I've experienced. We're in a cycle. We don't live, we're reborn. These are physical vessels. And it's apparently, from what I've learned, to our knowledge, it's the only way that we can experience a physical life. And I like to think that there is truth and basis in religion, in that if you're gifted life and you abuse that gift, or you abuse your own physical person or somebody else's physical person, then you will not come back in the same form. That it is a filtering system. And to take it back before, I was talking about if there is a benign God, and I gave the insect analogy. But again, this is my own thinking, but it's something I've had reinforced, in that nature is detached. Things are created, and then it's set free and it runs and takes its own course. But that's what sets us as beings above the beasts of the field, is one way I've heard it put, in a book called Proofs of Conspiracy by John Robinson, actually. That's what separates us. And I do believe it's a filtering system. I believe in reincarnation, in truth, yeah. And I do believe, like, say you're a bad person, you might come back as something horrible, like the bug that gets the wasp, the parasitic wasp injected. I don't know. But those are the lines in which I think. Karma lines, what goes around comes around. So I like to think that, yes, all the nice people I've met in my life that are goodly people, that have been philanthropic and caring and dutiful towards others, will be rewarded. But that's not what I see happening in life. I see the opposite. I see the scurrilous. I see the evil, the wicked being rewarded. It's a bit of a contradiction in terms. I'm saying being rewarded, but I was thinking along the lines of financial reward or materialistic reward. I'm not so sure that's of benefit, to be honest, ultimately, because there aren't many of us when we get to sort of like 55, 60, say, for instance, if we had £5 million or mansions, that we wouldn't trade those in for another 20 years. So time is what's of most value to me. But peace of mind is something, ever since I was young, that's what I used to say to friends and stuff. I ain't getting involved in this. They say, why? I said, because I want to preserve my peace of mind. I want to be able to live with myself. And we learn from our lessons, and I don't like feeling uncomfortable with myself. So therefore, I'm going to practice the sorts of things spiritual people practice, but naturally out of choice. But again, this is what's led me down that path, because I once actually literally stood up in a church and gave a speech. I asked the vicar if I could. And I was actually being harassed all over the place, being followed around and targeted. And it was full of children. They brought them in from a school. And I stood up and I said to the children, I said, look, I'm getting older now. And at the time I said, look, I don't know if any of you know who I am or not, because I'm living in some sort of void. But I'm experiencing a great deal of evil. So whilst I was just sat here, taking some sanctuary in, actually, and this happens to be going on, I'd just like to say something to the children, if I could. And I said to them, I said, just listen to me. I said, because just let me go and get the words right here, actually, so I remember it right, because I've fallen on my face with this before when I try and quote it. As a younger man, I believe that God and Jesus had turned their backs on me. So I walked away. And I got on with my life, and I've grown older now, and I've got to a point where I now realise that they never turned their backs on me. I turned my back on them, because they're still there. And then I gave a moral lesson to it, and every child in that church stood up, started waving its arms around. And that's one of my proudest moments, one of the most intense moments of my life as well, because I was literally being pursued, but it was like a pack of wolves that were just trying to destroy me. And I was doing everything I could to resist it and deal with it, but I didn't know about the technology at that time either. Now, I won't go into detail about triggering, but you don't know you're being triggered most of the time at the time. It comes out later. Now, I met this lady 3 times, and the second time I met her, it was totally random as well. I live in London, and I meet her 3 times. No accident. The second time I met her, as I was leaving and walking away, she followed me, so I called her over, and I said, look, can you keep a secret? And she said, yes. I said, the first time I met you, I fell completely head over heels in love with you, but my life at the moment is just ridiculous. I just can't entertain involving myself with anybody. And she just said, she answered me at the time, she said, I promise I won't tell anybody. But I go to another party, and she turns up again. Now, she started to trigger me. And again, I'm just at the time looking at her mannerisms and stuff and thinking, a bit unusual, but how did you know this about me? Because straight away I'm like... But anyway, she ended up storming off that night, and I didn't follow her. And I got a phone call in my office, and I knew it was her. She's very posh. Hello, wanker, she said. And I'm like, I don't know. You know, I was wanting to apologise, and I said, just before I could say anything more, she said, I will talk to you later, and put the phone down. I'm like, oh, you got me off the hook there then, because I didn't really know how to explain myself. Later that night, I'm sat at my desk on my computer, and I remember the exact line I was writing, and a female voice commented on it and giggled in my head. And she just said, now we're getting somewhere. And I'm out of my chair. Where's the microphone? Where did that come from? Because it was a voice. And I got, calm down, calm down. There are things about your life you don't know yet. I told you I'd talk to you later. And I'm like, hang on a minute. She went, yes. There are things about your life. Firstly, you're a soldier and you don't know it. And secondly, I'm your wife and you don't remember that either. That's why we had such an affinity. Now, Ellis, this could be, being an experienced target now, this could possibly be true, be a reality. And she's definitely in on it because of the triggering, because she knew me. That was a fact. But it also, it could be a setup to do this to me. There's a movie called Source Code. And I often use it as an example of what my life's like, because it's actually a soldier, who got blown up on the battlefield, and he doesn't know it, but he's in a laboratory with no arms and no legs, and his mind's wide up to technology. And he's got a female soldier that talks to him and counsels him and talks him through, but they don't tell him the truth, because this technology allows him to go back 8 minutes in time and complete missions. So literally, as a soldier, they're using him as he's dying in this program. And that's what my life's like. I've got the female that communicates with me. She's motherly, she's loving, she's wifely. She calls it wifecraft. And she is there purely for my psychological support, just like the guy in this film. And this has gone on for years.
It's still going on.
Well, the thing is, I've got control of it now. If I don't want talking to, I don't get talked to. Every now and then, somebody might chip in just for some support, or she might. But it's kind of sort of like, I'm interfaced, with a computer, or seemingly with her or other people. Now, a hive mind. I went to my doctor after I'd seen all these psychologists, and I explained to him that I'd explained to them how I was able to deal with all this. And I explained a hive mind to him at the time. I said, look, this is what they tell me in my head, doctor. Now we've got to this point where I can talk openly. They tell me they're a team of people, and they wear helmets to communicate with me, and that I represent their entire professional lives, and that this is real. I really am a soldier, but not of the traditional kind. Now, I explained this to my doctor without anything to back it up whatsoever, but the book I profiled out there, Project Soulcatcher, not only describes this, there's a diagram clearly showing it. The one person, a firewall so that one person cannot see into the other people's minds via the technology, but they can influence that other person. So I'm not an individual. And this is true, believe me. I've been dealing with it for so long. So year after year after year now. And it's not insanity. It's so rational. It is protracted conversations. And they tell me things that I don't know myself. Even a crazy person cannot do that. You cannot.
For instance?
Yeah, I used to say when I was working, because I used to coach a lot of university leavers on life and the business world and jobs and stuff. And I used to say to them, look, people are just like computers in that they cannot possibly give out the correct answers unless they've had the information fed in to enable them to do so. And that's a fact, and I couldn't have worked out or figured out or even made up some of the things that I've been told in my head. And that's one of them, the hive mind thing. Before I'd read anything about it, heard anything about it, they explained it in my head. And that's impossible to do otherwise. I've got no scientific background. To me, this was my exact words to the doctor that told me what was wrong with me. No, not words. Word was bollocks. And the words that followed that actually were, Why do doctors keep trying to mess with my head? I want my wisdom teeth out. That's what the problem is. Come on. It's not, he said. Your teeth are growing normally. And then he persisted. And then he's showing me x-rays. And I'm like, I can't read x-rays. These weren't MRIs at the time. X-rays are a lot more complicated, isn't it? Because there's all sorts in the way. But yeah, he goes on and on and on. And no, I don't doubt it in any way whatsoever. But also, given my experiences of mind control, as I've just alluded to there with this lady, could have been used, the situation could have been set up to manipulate me. I really, truly hope it's true, because I've had the most... I didn't elaborate with this on Vice when they asked me about this, you know, how I felt about... They told me what I really wanted from life. I said was to find the one, my true love. But the thing is, because this is my belief system, they know how to play on me as well, you see. You've got to look at it, it's like smoke and mirrors. You've got to look at it both ways. However, what I didn't tell them at that time, she said, you know, because you must feel cheated and stuff and what have you. The absolute truth is, I've had the most incredible relationship imaginable with this woman, even if it's virtual reality and it's been faked. You can't ignore it, and she's been nothing but absolutely good for me. And it's really brought home how advantageous having the right partner in life could and should be, when I've literally had partners who were planted on me to destroy me in my life. And that's a fact. You know, I've got a daughter, and I will say this on camera because I said it before. A daughter I know, her mother was paid to have a child by me, to manipulate my life thereafter. And they have done. Which isn't easy for my daughter. My daughter doesn't know this yet, but she's going to have to learn it. But everything I've been doing since I was a young man, it has been largely to protect my daughter. But I had no idea that I was going to go up level by level by level to find myself in my current situation. I thought it was pretty straightforward and just normal problems in life, you know, from the off. But there was something very wrong, and I knew it. And I wanted to know, like any, I'll say animal. Our first instinct is to protect our offspring. We're no different from other animals. One of the things I didn't mention in my speech today is that we are mammalian. And they are trying to change us into something we are not. I think I used the word Shakespeare. You know, that's the question with this technology. To be or not to be. Me, that is. And this is the question. But we're not even able to debate it. You know, because they're not admitting it to us. They're just doing it to us. And that's as criminal as things get. That is a war on the population. So as far as I'm concerned now, if nothing changes pretty soon, that's what I'm going to be preaching to the population. Let's do war on them back in any way we can. And I don't mean necessarily violence, because we haven't got a chance. We wouldn't have, otherwise I'd advocate it. But we can change things. We can bring them down. We live in a democracy. We can take back control of our institutions, which supposedly, particularly in a society like ours, are supposed to be a birthright, that were earned and created by our forefathers and our ancestors for us, so life would improve for society, for people, for the children that are coming through. But it hasn't. It's got worse. And they're just keeping us happy with trinkets and technology, which is literally conditioning everybody to accept this crap. They want us all chipped and able to hook up to Google directly with their minds. We don't need it, and believe me, you won't want it once you've got it. As fantastical as it sounds, we've got PCs, use PCs. Do not have this stuff put into your mind, because you are lost. And let's make the point as well, because it's from the off, I've been told that these chips are marked with 666. That they are working to see that Bible prophecy comes true. And this is the mark of the beast they're talking about. And they're putting it into the entire population. And these people believe that their Lord and Master is going to come and take over the planet.
I was going to say, you think they're people?
And evil will prevail.
You think they're people, or you're not sure?
You think?
You think they are people, they're humans, or do you think?
Well, I stick to that. You know, I mean, I've admitted before, you know, in my writings and stuff, that they've had me talking to aliens and stuff. But, I mean, I don't necessarily have to take it seriously. And the times when this V2K's been negative, I mean, I'm in the middle. I'm in no man's land. And sometimes the good V2K is used to help me deal with the negative V2K, and even to dismiss it sometimes. But I can't write it off, Ellis, now. Not given what I've been exposed to via the likes of fear and bases and other environments, and the research I've done off the back of that. It is very, very convincing. And somebody that I do respect and listen to is John Irwin. John's getting on now, he's 78 years old. And John is not just absolutely convinced, he just tells you who's behind this or what's behind this, and Nephilim. You know, and I've had such experiences as well, dealing with demonic entities and stuff. But I emphasise again that this stuff can be faked, which is why I don't talk about it that much. I don't mind, as I've said to Vice, in context, talking about these things. But to my mind, as soon as I mention aliens or any other being, I'm doing every other TI out there a disservice. Because we don't care. We're dealing with human issues here, human rights. We are human beings, and therefore, as the Constitution, well, ours doesn't state because it isn't written, but any unwritten Constitution states, we've got a right to certain things in life. And they're removing absolutely every single one of them. As soon as that chip is put into your child or you're lost, if they so choose. It can be activated at any time, and you are lost. You are no longer an individual, free human being. You are a mind control slave. You are a biological unit, not a human being. And this is what we need to stop.